Then the two of you will be incapacitated, and it could be bad for both. So you have to take care of yourself first before you take care of that one. So you might be thinking, have you ever traveled with kids before? And we traveled to Washington, D.C. some years ago, and my oldest was only about 3 at the time. And so we were on the plane. He loved airplanes. It was the greatest thing. It was the first time he'd ever been on a flight. And we were getting ready to get out on the runway, ready to take off from National Airport there in D.C. And as we were getting ready, we start to, they start to hit it and pull back the acceleration, and away we go. And all of a sudden, we just stopped, nose down, really quick, and slowed down really fast. Evidently, a small plane had started to taxi out onto the runway right in front of us. And my son, being the very calm 3-year-old that he was, he goes, "We crashed!" So you may know exactly what it's like to go along on a trip and take kids in an airplane and maybe their first experience or whatever. But that one was one that'll be memorable for us. But thank goodness the masks did not drop. I think after that, I was ready to put anything over his mouth, all right? And so, you can kind of think that it's an important thing, but it would be difficult for any parent. You have a desire to take care of your kid right away. They're the one hungry. If you don't feed them, yikes. And you're trying to figure out, how do I take care of them? What do I do to get them to that certain point? I know that for some of us in this room, a series like this would be like, why are we doing this on parenting? I'm not a parent. I don't necessarily have kids. I don't have any intention of having kids, maybe. I don't know. That may be completely something in your mind. But I will tell you, this affects all of us. As I spoke of last week, it's an important thing to understand the relationship between those 3,000 waking hours. And every one of them, right? As parents or guardians of kids, you're taking care of them. You're their primary caregiver. You have 3,000 hours with your kids. And you might say, it seems more like 7,000 hours at times. But one of the things that's difficult, is that for the church, for those of us who call Faircreek home, we only have about 40 hours on average with every one of them. Whether they're in nursery all the way up through high school, we only get about 40 hours a year. 3,040. All right, it's much different. And so it's very, very important that this relationship between the two is very strong, and that we are partnering with each other. That means that everyone in the church, it doesn't matter whether you have children or not. There's a principle that I introduced last week, and I want you to hear it again. There is always someone younger you can influence. Always. There is always someone younger you can influence. The older I get, the more I have to influence. And I can tell you this, that it's critical that in this relationship, that those of us who are part of the church, are part of Faircreek, this group of people, that we do everything we can to support, to resource, to encourage, everything we can to do all of that for those who have those 3,000 hours. We're going to talk about it specifically today, and a lot of us, we had different experiences growing up, and maybe you had some of this, but for all of us here today, we all have to realize this. And one of the things that's important is that we're here to be stewards of this. This is incredible. We're all stewards of the faith of the next generation. Every one of us here today, every one of us that are watching, every person involved here today, we are the stewards of the faith of the next generation. That means we need to do our part. And it's not just a small part. I believe it is something that we all need to be behind. And if I would kind of like to say it this way, as one of the leaders of this church, that if I stood up here and said, we are for the next generation, I would get a cheer out of you as if the Bengals had won the Super Bowl. All right? Don't boo. Don't boo. All right? That's not going to work for me. Anyway, I would tell you that it's important for every one of us to realize how this plays a role in God's plan for the church and for the future. I'm excited about today because what I get to share with you today is, I believe, a key element. If everyone in this room picks up on this, it would be life-changing. Those of you who are parents, grandparents, guardians of the next generation, they're in your home, you're giving them care, you're taking care of them. This is probably some of the most important words you could ever hear and act on. And for the rest of us, even if we don't have ones within our home, we have someone younger than us that we can influence. And being a part of the church, this group of people, we have a great need to support young families, older families, whoever is raising those children in their homes. So, if you're a child here today, all right, some of you are younger, you're not married, you don't have kids or whatever, maybe that's something on the horizon for you, maybe you're hoping. Or if you are the oldest person in the room, it makes no difference. We are all stewards of the faith of the next generation. To actually see this and to see how important it was a value that God held high. And Moses spoke of this in Deuteronomy. And last week we used Deuteronomy 6 when looking at this. But then at the end of the speech that Moses gave, that he was giving there in that chapter, he says it again, but he even gives it more emphasis. A little difference in the reason why this is so important. He does that in Deuteronomy 11. Now, these ancient Jewish scriptures are sometimes passed over, sometimes they're forgotten, but this is critical. Very important information. And quite honestly, Jesus held these very high in how he taught. And he would, because these are his principles. Look at this. In Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "Love the Lord your God and keep his requirements, his decrees, his laws, and his commands always." This is probably the most important statement I will read today. Love the Lord your God. It shows us the need for an incredibly personal relationship with God. You don't just love anything. There has to be some reason why you're drawn to it. You have this desire for it. You have this heart for it. And you know ultimately that the principles and these requirements and decrees, and a lot of people will get hung up on these very words. Requirements, I don't like to be required to do anything. That sound like maybe some of your kids, you know? Or his decrees, well, you know, they were so long ago. Are they real? Or his laws. You know, it may be even easier for some people to say, I can follow laws more than I can follow requirements. Aren't they much the same? And even the commands that he gives. All of these, always on our hearts. Why? Because we know that the Lord our God has a reason for giving us these kinds of boundaries for our life. We know that this is what would make our lives better if we were to follow these things. God is never doing something to restrict us or to hold us back. He's actually doing things and giving us these requirements and these commands and those things so that we can excel, so that we can actually do better at life. And so if we understand that and are willing to submit our control For the one who knows us better and knows what the future would be better, like if we were to follow him, then we are going to find so much more. So when he says, love the Lord your God, it means make it a priority in your life. Have affection for it and to have a personal relationship with God. And so that's very critical, very, very important. It's underlying for everything we're talking about today. But then the verses go on. And he says, if this is a statement for you to do, there's an understanding of this. And he says, you've got to remember something. So the verses go on. It says, remember today that your children, now he's speaking to these people. Moses is saying it to these people there. Remember your children. And I would say for us here today, let's remember the children that are under our care right now. All right? As Faircreek and in homes. All right? Let's remember that our children, and I love this. Look at what he says. They were not the ones who saw and experienced the discipline of the Lord your God, his majesty, his mighty hand, his outstretched arm. The verses that follow this, it kind of goes into a detail of all of these things that God did and that the people saw. But he said, remember, your kids were just born. They haven't been around long enough to see all of this. They're going to have to hear of God's majesty and his mighty hand and his outstretched arm. They're going to have to hear about this from somebody. Somebody's going to need to tell them who he is, what he's done, how he delivered us. I mean, they had many stories to be able to pass on. And they weren't just stories. These were events that they experienced. Things that for them it was real. And so Moses reminded them, love the Lord your God because it's important that they see you have a personal relationship with this God of majesty and a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Notice each one of those. Majesty, meaning there's no one like him. His mighty hand, meaning he's strong. And his outstretched arm, meaning he reaches to us. You want your kids to know how great God really is. And the song we just sang is, wow, how appropriate this morning to think of the fact that many times we don't realize how big God really is. He's bigger than we think he is. And so it's important. If they weren't there, it goes on. And this is amazing. He says, but it was your own eyes that saw all these great things the Lord has done. He's reminding these parents and the generations that came before, you've got to pass this on. They've got to understand and know who God is. You've got to make it a priority. But what do you do first in your own life? You love the Lord your God. It's a critical thing that every person who is caring for a child, and we have that responsibility as a church. Have I made it clear today that we're all responsible for this? Okay, over last week and this week, and I will continue to do that because it is every one of us. We own responsibility in this. We've been given that responsibility. There's always someone younger that you can influence, always, and we are all the stewards of the faith of the next generation. So it's important. It was not their eyes, it was your eyes that saw this. If you've seen God work in your life, he's done an amazing thing in your life. He's changed you. Do your children know that? Have you shared your story with the younger generations in this church? If you're an older parent, if you're an empty nester, you've made it through in a sense, and you feel like, hey, I've got something. You know what? You have an opportunity then to build into a younger family who just had a baby. You know? And did you know, there's a few people who just had babies, all right, in this nursery. If you don't believe it, go look at the toddler room and the nursery room, okay? Go look at preschool. Whew, all right? There are many children that God has brought our way because he's brought you our way. And that's fantastic. I mean, we want to make every bit of those hours we have with them, but we want to support you and encourage you. That's always going to be important to us, a great value. But it's going to be us who do this. Now, hear this. We believe, though, because of that 3,000 hours, because the fact that God has placed those children in your home, that a parent is the main influencer in the life of a child. A parent is the main influencer in the life of a child, meaning you're the one who's going to be able to pass that on better than anyone. Don't believe that you bring them to church to learn all the spiritual stuff. All right? Unfortunately, that is a big mistake that many parents make. And I'm going to be very blunt here this morning, okay? This is what happens. We do all the other things for them, but just like we want them to develop socially or we want them to be strong physically, we take them to a soccer coach or to some other kind of organization or group for them to be in, and they'll teach them these things and take care of it. We treat the church the same way. We treat this group of people here, we treat Faircreek as if it's the place that there'll be all the answers we ever need spiritually. So I don't have to really do much for them, okay? Let me just tell you something. That's wrong, okay? Get my point? It doesn't work that way. 3,000 hours that you have available to you, you want to do everything. You're the main influencer. You might say, Greg, those are big shoes to fill. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Don't know if I can do it. I've never been very good at talking to my kids. Okay? I want to give you some principles about how to help you with that. All right? I want to give you some tools that the church offers, that we offer as this group, all of us together, we offer these things. I want to take you back to Deuteronomy, and I want you to look in verse 18. It says this, "Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads." Now, this, in some cases, the Hebrew people that became the Jewish nation, they have used these things as ways to do worship. And they'll, even with their families, some will wear what they call phylacteries. And they'll put these boxes on their head that have the verses, the very verses we've read here, the ones that are the Shema, the ones that are so important, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. They have those inside those boxes. And they'll wear them out there. Why? Because they want their children to see them out there on the front of their head so that everyone can see how important those are in the home. Matter of fact, they'll even tie them. They'll have a piece of leather with verses written on them and then wrapped around their arm to make sure that it's seen with the predominant hand. If you're right-handed or left-handed, you'd wear it the same way. And you do this in front of your children so that they would see that these principles are there. But actually, I don't really believe this. I don't believe that was exactly what Moses was saying. Go out and make these little leather boxes that today cost about $1,200 and put them on your forehead so your children will follow God. I think the beginning of this is what it tells us to do. Fix these words of mine in your what? Say it. Hearts and minds. It's supposed to be there. If it's in your heart and mind, okay, it usually comes out, okay? I mean, really, doesn't it? I mean, if it's something on your heart and mind, if you're angry and that's on your heart and mind, what comes out? Anger, right? But when we consider what God is trying to get across, and this is so important, hearts and minds is what's incredibly important for us. It needs to be there, that these things. Love the Lord your God. If you love the Lord your God, and that becomes a priority to you, and even if you might say, wow, I'd be starting from scratch. Can I just tell you? Start scratching. Okay? It's so important to have it written on your heart and your mind, because that's how people are going to see it. That's how your children, or the people that you care for, they're going to see it. Those younger than you, they're going to see it. So if we were moving on, I want you to see this. This is probably the most important thing I could say when it comes to this. But modeling a real and authentic faith is more powerful than just getting your kids to behave like Christians. Do I get an amen? Okay. See, here's the point. I think a lot of us, when we show up to church, if our faith is only a Sunday faith, we show up and we look right, and the kids come in behaving because we have threatened them an inch of their life in the car. or we've bribed them and you have to go out and go into debt to pay off the bribe to get them to come in. Okay? Now, we kind of have this feeling, and hopefully it's your experience, but we would a lot rather kids cry because they have to leave here rather than when they come, okay? So that's kind of our approach to this. We want kids to go, ooh, can't wait, it's Sunday, yeah, And I've heard kids say, all week long, is it Sunday yet? Is it Sunday yet? Is it Sunday yet? That's great. That's what we want them to feel. But let me just tell you, if that's the only time that they hear this, modeling a real and authentic faith is what's critical. Do your kids see a weird difference in you on Sunday morning, at least once you walk in the doors here? Do they see a difference in you there than what they see through the week? Yikes. Sorry. Please like me after this, all right? I think too many times all we're interested in is getting them to behave like Christians. I want to tell you this is important. It's not a parent's responsibility to raise faith-filled children. What? Can that be real? That statement? Greg, please explain. Of course it's my responsibility to raise faith-filled children. I've got to make sure of that. Let me just tell you though, let me twist it, and it should sound like this. It's a parent's responsibility that their children see a faith-filled parent. If they see that, that is passing it down just like Moses encouraged the children of Israel to do with their children, the generations lower than them. Let me just tell you, if you do this and you live a real and authentic life in front of them, they will not be able to escape how good God is, even in times of trouble. I have a great quote here from Ed Stetzer, and I don't know if you know this. It's lengthy, so just follow along. And if you're saying, I wish I had that quote, or I wish that, if you just go on the church app and you go to YouVersion, it's right there. It'll come up. All of this will be right there available to you. We have to share with our children our own struggles, brokenness, and failures so that they might see that we are imperfect creatures seeking to follow a perfect God and His standards. We'll just keep going. The reality is, you and I have done things or made mistakes that maybe our children don't know. That we have been tempted, or that we have even succumbed to that temptation. So when appropriate, key words, all right? Yeah, your dad was I was a pothead when I was a kid. Yeah, it was really amazing. And it was really hard, I found myself just doing it constantly all the time. And then I got really started loving the drinking beer. It was just awesome. And then when I turned 4, I was, okay, this is not a blah, 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 okay? This is being real and authentic, okay? This is being real and authentic. So when appropriate, we want to share when the opportunity arises. We want to be fellow strugglers. Do your kids know that you're human and have a relationship with Jesus? How will they know what grace is if they don't see you experiencing that grace in your own life? And then, yes, we are struggling at different times and in different ways, yes. I mean, I don't know how many of you have problems with your hand in the cookie jar like maybe your kids, although that might be a problem. We are struggling differently, but when it comes to sin and our relationship with God and the grace of God to us because of that, we're all the same. And this is important, struggling at different times and in different ways, but we are fellow strugglers in the midst of the world's brokenness. This world is broken. Kids need to hear from us. They need to know that they're sinners. And you might say, that's my kid right there. Okay, definitely. But let me just tell you, this is an incredible importance. Who has the most influence? But when it comes to making a decision to be a follower of Jesus, I want to show you this graph, and it's amazing. Parents, 208 people responded to this survey. Parents, 50% of people who were surveyed came to know Jesus Christ in a relationship with him where they admitted sin and asked him into their life, received him. 50.5% got there and made that decision because of their parents, because of the people caring for them. The next one in line is a children's ministry or a leader. You know, that may occur or happen, but quite honestly, we try to make things a little different here. We don't really try to get kids to make decisions. We want them to be with you when they make those decisions. And then Christian friends. Now, there are a smattering of others here. But when it comes to how important it is and the influence of a child or a student coming to know Jesus Christ as their personal God, their personal Savior, parents play an incredible role there. Incredible role. I want to tell you, we have a great resource for you. Coming up on May 22nd, around 10:30, this will be right after this service and right before the other service in between. Parents, sign up now in the next building, in the preschool theater. It's called Jumpstart. And it is a tool that we do. You might say, I don't know if I could have a conversation right now with my kids about their faith. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. This is a great tool and a great opportunity, very non-threatening environment, but you are required to go. You need to go with them. Don't send them, you go with them. And then you'll get tools to follow up with them about how important this is. I want to take you back to Deuteronomy 11 as we wrap up, and I want you to see this. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. This is definitely a prescription. Do this all the time, wherever you are. Make it part of your conversation. Find places and times when you can do this. And one of the things that I love about what we've got going on here at the church is we provide tools for you to be able to do this. If you're like, I don't know how to just start talking about that with my kids, then make it a part of your daily routine. Make it a part of what you're doing. And can I just say, those of you who are in the room saying, well, I don't have kids, I'm out of the loop. No, I want to tell you, now is the time that we need more people to be mentors to children and students, more now than ever. More now than ever. And so you might say, I don't know if that fits me. I'll tell you what, come and work a little while, you'll know whether it fits you or not. Okay? Better that we move in that direction than to ignore it and hope someone else will rise to the occasion and do it. This is an important part of life. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you're involving the conversation. You're bringing these things together where you're talking to them. And this is why. It says all of this so that. This is the why. He says so that. The why behind all of this. Remember what we saw before, that there were decrees and requirements and all these things because it would lead to a better life, a better situation, or a better circumstance? Now you get the why. Why would you do this? Why would you talk about it all the time? Why would you make it part of your daily? Why would you intentionally have conversations with the kids you care for? Why would you do this? So that, and then the verse goes on, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. You might say, is this a promise of No, let me tell you, it's a principle. It's a wisdom point. It's something to realize that you will lead them to a better way of life if you show them this, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land. If they gave up on God, then they would not have the relationship with Him. They would not have that guarantee of God being present with them all the time. They had to be sure that they were doing what was making life better. It's such an important part of what we talk about and how important these things are. But the closer you are to God, the more equipped you will be to live your life. And that's what you're wanting to give your kids. The closer you are to God, the more you're going to do it. Matter of fact, the last thing you want to do is try to coerce your kids, force your kids, try to persuade your kids to do something, the greatest way that they will see God is by seeing Him active in your life. And as they see that, then that's what draws them. That's what makes it real to them. That's what makes them want to be part of it. If they see you loving the Lord your God, you know? If they see you making everything that He makes important in your home and in your personal life, imagine the impact. And then we start to partner together, and I want to let you know, we talk about that all the time here, okay? That's an important part. And so we partner together. You're talking about an incredible force of the church and the home working together. So in all of this, the whole idea, and for those of you who are like, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if it's possible, I want to give you some practicalities. Right where your kids are. So first of all, the greatest principle that I can encourage you with is this: imagine the end. Imagine the end. And I'm going to encourage you to do that one milestone at a time. Last Sunday night, we had an incredible event where parents were invited to come and to be a part of it. Sorry if you weren't able to attend. There will be follow-up events. Please watch for those. It'll be very important for you to be a part of it. But every person that came received a book. And in that book, it gave principles of what these milestones look like. You know what I'm talking about, a milestone? It's to a certain point. You can expect this, or this might be the best way to talk to your children during that period of time. So leading up to that. So I want to take you through a few of these milestones that are actually there about their spiritual life and their development. It's written out in the book. It's right there. It's available. And so it starts out with foundation. And this starts with children that are at the youngest levels, preschool age and younger. Okay? Maybe those first couple of years of elementary. But they're asking this question: what do I believe? That's where all the why questions come from. Have you had any preschoolers ask you why questions? Oh my goodness. Wow. You know? They'll ask you the why questions. Why? Because this is what they're trying to find out. And they want from you. They trust you. You are your child's first and best teacher because they trust you. They trust you. They trust you to give them food, to make sure they're bathed, make sure they make it to the places they need to go, that they're tucked in at night, all those things. Why wouldn't it be important to make sure that we're telling them what they should believe? Listen, it's a lot harder to start talking to a 16-year-old than it is to start talking to a 16-month-old. Okay? So I'm going to encourage you, the younger you can start. But don't say, well, my kids are 16, I'm always over. No. Okay? It's not. Quite honestly, you actually have a different way. You can actually start in with them more closer to an adult conversation than you can, obviously, with a 16-month-old. The next level, and the next part is identity. And that's when they're in that middle range of elementary all the way up through, like 5th, 6th grade. And they're trying to find their identity. Boy, this is important. In a world today where people are all the time wondering who they are. Who am I? What was I supposed to be? Trying to find, who I'm supposed to be. And so they're asking these questions. Who do you say I am? Meaning they're caregivers. And who does God say I am? If you know this or not, but we're all image bearers of God. We were made in the image of God. And what a great thing for your kids to learn early in their life. You were made in the image of God, and the way you are, He loves you just like you are. But they don't do this and don't do this like they're supposed to. And everybody on Facebook says that they're supposed to be doing this and they should be involved. Can I just tell you? Start paying attention to what God's measure of their worth and value is rather than what everybody else says. All right? And this is critical. Talk about how God has made them in His image to be uniquely who they are. You get into middle school, and this is where this is so important. They find out what mercy needs to be. And if you've ever had a middle schooler in your house, you know you need to show mercy. Okay? So critical. Why do I need a relationship with Jesus? This is the time when they start to really contemplate this at a real level. It's time for their faith to really become their own. And how do I treat others? How am I supposed to talk to other people? How am I supposed to live with somebody who's so different than I am? How am I supposed to treat them? Great opportunities for parents to do this, and this is why. This is when, let's have that last part. This is when it is time to learn of their need for grace. This is when they start to learn how much that they do. And it may be difficult for you to tell your kids, that, they need Jesus, because without Him, you've got to pay for this yourself. You've got to deal with this yourself. Let me just tell you, it's so important, because you're not going to be able to take them through these things unless they trust you first, unless you've pointed in them. But this is the kind of conversation that they're looking for. They want to know what it is to have a relationship with Jesus. They want that defined. And the best way is to live it and show it in front of them. And then you get into high school, and this is important. I know I got some high school people up here on the front and just recently out of high school. They're looking for meaning. And I'm sure if I were to ask you, but isn't it true? Who has God called me to be? In other words, what purpose has God put on my life? Does God have a purpose for me? Does He have something He wants specifically for me to do? And can I make a difference? They want to know the answers to this. Let me just tell you, this is critical. You are the only you this world will ever know. I love that statement. This is Dan Allende who wrote this, and I'm quoting him. But you're the only you this world will ever know. You're unique. God created you with purpose to make a difference. And something about you is meant to make something about God known in a way no one else can. Parents, grandparents, church, would it not be amazing if we were to turn the next generation loose with this concept that they're there to share who God is uniquely in the way that only they can, that God made them to do that? Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter whether they graduate from college. Sorry, I just did it for you. It doesn't matter where they end up, that they have a house and that they have the car and that their debts are all paid, or that whatever, okay? Yeah, those are all parts of life. But this is the point. If you send your children out of your home, if the church equips them and we actually are able to see them stay within the church, this is what becomes their mantra. This is what becomes their plan for life. This becomes their purpose. They were uniquely created to share God with other people like no one else can. That's huge. Around here at Faircreek, we love this quote that Reggie Joyner has done. And Reggie is the guy who basically God used to put Orange together, the curriculums that we use with our students and our children. He said this: God desires to work through every parent to demonstrate His story of restoration and redemption. I don't know about you, but that challenges me. As a parent and as a grandparent, to know that I'm supposed to demonstrate this story to my own children, to my grandchildren, and to the generations that are in this church. That is so critical. This is what it's all about, restoration and redemption. That's why Jesus came. I want to encourage you. You might say, I just don't know. Can I do this? Well, the best thing I can do is offer you tools. One of the things that we've got here is called the Parent Cue. It goes along with our curriculum. And you can parent smarter, not harder. I'm going to encourage you, point your device at that screen right now, all right? Get your phones out. If you don't already have the Parent Cue app, this will give you all kinds of tools, things that you can use with your kids. And those of you in the church that are like, I don't know why this is so important, do you know that there's actually things on there for you too? So I'm going to encourage everybody to get the Parent Cue app. All right? Very, very important. Good. I'm glad to see some phones going up. That's awesome. Very important for us. I just say this. You want to train your kids so that they're not experiencing a Sunday faith, but an everyday faith. Not just a Sunday faith, but an everyday faith. And yes, we'll do everything we can to come alongside, to be a part of it, but it's for you to do, and it's a privilege and an honor if you're raising kids. And for the church, no greater thing we can say than the faith of the next generation is worth everything to us. I leave you with this one last statement. I may not have done it right in the past, but I can start today to do better. And it may be that you need to use resources that we have available. And in just a minute, I want you to see a story from a family who has been using those resources. Maybe you can see yourself in this story. Watch the Tuckers.
Hi, I'm Tiffany, and I have two little girls. I have one that's in Kid Street and one in middle school. And at the beginning of the year, my youngest, the one that's in 3rd grade, she got a family road trip packet on Kid Street. And it was something for not just her, but for the whole family. It was just little activities that you would do once a month. So at the beginning of the year, the activity was to make New Year's resolution, or kind of like a New Year's resolution. I am a New Year's resolution queen. I love them, and it annoys everybody in my house. Because I'm like, what's your goal this year? And they're like, But, so Kid Street was on my side this year, and, but we got to do it, but it was more like, this is actually it. It was creating a family motto. So we got to get together as a family and figure out what we wanted our family motto to be for 2022. And so ours was get uncomfortable. Just getting uncomfortable, doing the hard things and being a little bit more confident in things. I've seen both of my kids step up in like worship team. It was cool seeing my kid do that without me in the room, and finding out, and also seeing her little sister be excited to see that she was getting uncomfortable and that she's like taking the stuff that she's learning and putting it into action. And it was cool being able to say that to her. I'm like, you got uncomfortable, you know? But each month we do little family night things. Like there was one month we cooked together. We did like family cheesesteaks. I think we played games together that night too. The recent one that we did was a puzzle. It was talking about prayer. And Sawyer got to design, it was a white puzzle, and she got to design it, and she used permanent marker and she had to write pray on it. And then she got to decorate it, and then we all did the puzzle together, and it was really fun. And we prayed together, which was pretty cool. I didn't realize how much I valued it until we started doing things like this, because inevitably something would happen in school with one of them and they'd be upset, and it's definitely God, because like there would be nights where I'm talking to them and they're really upset, and then things will come up of things that we talked about with these family packs, or get uncomfortable. We also have a family verse, and it's build each other up. So it's helped navigate fights between sisters by saying, are you building each other up, or are you tearing each other down? So it's actually helped us navigate through like real life things that happen in school and at home. Seeing them own their faith isn't necessarily just important for me because I want to see them do what I'm asking them to do. I want to be able to see that they do this on their own, because I'm not always going to be here, and I'm not going to always be in the room. So, and they're gonna be adults before I know it, and I want them to be good leaders to their friends and for themselves. Like, I want them to know what to do without me having to be there, and know who to go to without me telling them.
So I say this to you today, to create a place, an environment. If you serve in this church, if you serve as a part of what we do, then you are helping make that possible. Every team has a way of making that happen for families. If you're a part of that team that definitely is involved directly, I mean, you're directly involved with the kids, you know, whether they're students or elementary, whatever age, preschool, then thank you. Because you are making a direct relationship between those 3,000 hours and those 40 hours possible. As parents, thank you. But remember this, that you can start today, giving them not just a Sunday faith, but an everyday faith. And then I say to all of us, an opportunity is right in front of us to make sure that we are doing everything. So if you are not serving in this church, I'm going to ask you today to please step up. If this is your church home, then this is the way we support the next generation. I'm asking everyone that makes this their home, this is your church, then please serve. Find a place, whether it's directly with children or supporting the ministries that do. And then I'm going to ask you something else. And this one may be the most encroaching, but the most important. I'm going to ask you to give. By giving, you give an opportunity for us to make those kind of packets available to children and their families. But it also allows you to worship God and take on His priorities, and especially that statement, love the Lord your God and follow Him. It will lead to a better life. May I say this as I close? Critical to all of us is praying.